Hey, Design Her Travel Tribe. Quick note before we get started with today's episode. Design Her Travel is launching a new group trip soon, and the waitlist is now open. If you would like to travel the world with me and other amazing individuals in a small group setting, then this trip is for you. More details will be coming soon, but for now, hop on the waitlist. You will be the first to know when the doors open. Just head over to the show notes, click on the link that says waitlist, and I'll see you there. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Design Her Travel podcast. I'm your host, Kim Anderson. As an avid traveler, global nomad, and someone who considers himself a citizen of the world, I want to say welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. My hope in creating this podcast is to inspire you to take the leap of faith and to design the life of your dreams. For me, that includes connecting with like-minded individuals and creating a community of souls living their best lives out, in, and around the world. Each week, you'll hear stories and conversations from fellow travelers who have figured out how to incorporate travel as a key component in their daily lives. Their stories are beautiful and inspiring, just like you. I can't wait to go on this journey with you. So let's do this. Here we go. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to today's episode of the Design Her Travel podcast. I'm your host, Kim Anderson. Today is a travel talk episode that was inspired by my conversation earlier this week with Sandra Radice. Sandra is the author of the book, Our Green Change, and she writes about the story of her family choosing to uproot their Sydney life and move to Bali, where their child could experience an alternative form of education and they could just do life differently for a little while. The school they chose was called Green School, and it was located in Bali. And Sandra was so moved by her family's experience that she wrote this book to tell that story. If you haven't tuned in to that episode yet, make sure that you go back and do that. Her episode is number 111. That's 111. You can click the link in the show notes, or you can search 111. And it will take you right there. Here at Design Her Travel, we have had many conversations with families that have decided to do life on their terms. They've decided to continue traveling in one way or another. And when they do that, it requires an alternative education model. As the world moves into a more digital age, then we will continue to see these quote unquote alternative methods popping up, and education will continue to evolve. It got my wheels spinning after my conversation with Sandra, and I wanted to dive into the topic of alternative education methods for families to help you decide, is this the right method for you? The more conversations I have with families who have decided to do life their way, the more I am inspired by the various methods of education that are happening and transforming around the world. Alternative methods of education aren't for everyone, but they are for many people. So this episode is not just for families who want to travel full-time or spend more time on the road. This episode is also for you if you are just looking to do life a little bit differently. If you're finding yourself in a situation where the traditional schooling methods aren't working for you or your children, then stay tuned. My hope for this episode is that you get a taste of what some of these methods are and decide if this is right for you. So take what you love, leave what you don't. Let's dive in. Education in the age of the digital nomad. When it comes to education, most of us grew up with traditional schooling. You know the one, the daily grind of public or private school, homework, report cards, maybe some sports after school, and standardized tests. And let's be honest, that really works for a lot of families. Many families still work more traditional 9-to-5 lifestyle. But when you're living life on the road and moving from place to place, or have a desire to have more freedom and flexibility in your schedule, that system begins to feel a little too rigid. And in the past, schooling was tied to your zip code. But now things are a little more flexible. And thanks to technology, families are finding alternative ways to make education happen, even if that means redefining what school looks like. Here at Design Her Travel, we have met many families who world school their children. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is world schooling? Well, world schooling is exactly what it sounds like. It's the idea that the whole world can be your child's classroom. In this method of education, you're combining travel and education in a way that lets your kids learn through real life experiences. With world schooling, the concept is that learning doesn't have to be confined to a traditional classroom. Instead, your kids are learning from the world around them through history and culture and geography and real hands on experiences. So, how does this work? Well, say you're traveling in Japan and your child becomes fascinated by ancient Japanese art and architecture. So instead of just reading about it in a textbook, you can visit temples and museums in person. You can meet local artists or even try some of the traditional crafts. I have a friend whose son was obsessed with the Roman Empire. So when they visited Rome, their child got to learn hands on by walking through the Colosseum, by seeing the ancient Roman ruins, by studying the sculptures in museums, by taking it all in with sights and sounds and tastes. And so that is a real world education on that particular area of fascination. When kids get to explore that in the 3D world, then it really sinks in and they understand it on a level that's different than just sitting down and learning it through a textbook. And if you're thinking, well, what about things like biology? Snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reef, kids are able to learn about ecosystems, conservation, and science because they are literally surrounded by it. It's an integrative way to study the planet and how it works together. Biology isn't just something that's separate in a classroom. It's actually a part of a real world ecosystem that kids are able to experience firsthand when they're in the middle of it. Let's talk about world schooling and math. If your family chooses to volunteer for an organization like Habitat for Humanity, kids get to learn math by cutting wood and measuring for certain things. They learn fractions, they learn measurements, they learn construction, and they learn real world experience. And those things tend to seep in a lot more easily than trying to figure out pieces of a pie on a black and white paper. That's just me speaking from experience, but I know as a kid, I would have benefited greatly if I were able to put those subjects to use as opposed to them being just conceptual on a piece of paper. And yes, does this sound super dreamy, being able to travel around the world and educate your kids on a full-time basis with the world around them? Sure, it does for many. And there are some big pros to world schooling. And the biggest pro is that it brings learning to life. Your kids are experiencing things firsthand and not just reading about them. And the other pro, and the reason I think many people choose this methodology, is that it's highly flexible. You don't need to follow a set curriculum, and the world can inspire the lessons. As kids continue to experience things, then they begin to have a varied interest. And as their interests grow, then so do the possibilities of their education around the world. But on the flip side, it requires a lot of parental involvement and planning. You might be piecing together a learning plan for yourself, and for some families, the lack of structure might feel overwhelming. Some kids do perform better or do learn better in more structured educational styles. And so, if your kids are ones that do well in that structure, then this might not be the best method for you, or it might require more involvement as the parent in their day to day education. So let's talk about unschooling because, in my mind, unschooling and world schooling were very similar methods of education. And unschooling was something that always confused me a little bit. I felt like unschooling meant zero schooling. But despite its name, it's not about not learning. It's actually about learning in a more natural, unconstructed way. Unschooling is a child led form of education where there's no set curriculum and no formal lessons. Instead, kids learn through curiosity, exploration, and their own interests. It's about trusting that children have a natural desire to learn, and when given the freedom, they will. And so, what does this look like? How does unschooling work? Let's say your child is fascinated by astronomy. You might spend hours stargazing, researching space, watching documentaries, visiting an observatory, making a solar system model, things that are tactile and real world that allow you to learn more about the sky above you. The idea is that they learn deeply about what excites them rather than covering a broad, standardized curriculum. So, through their fascination of the sky, they might write stories, they might create art projects, they might learn in an observatory where they're learning the science of the stars and the science of how the galaxy and the planets work. So, they're getting a well rounded curriculum of education that happens to be centered or based around their love of the sky. Unschooling is about learning by doing, and it's real world experiences rather than textbooks. So, what's the benefit of unschooling? And the major benefit of unschooling is that it nurtures creativity, independence, and provides a deep love of learning. Kids are in control of what they learn, and they do so because they're genuinely curious. They're supported in their interests, and they know that they get to deep dive into topics that really fascinate them. This method of education also aligns beautifully with the digital nomad lifestyle because you don't need a traditional school schedule. Learning happens as you go wherever you are. Plus, there's a growing community of unschooling and world schooling families, so you're not alone. You can connect with others through meetups, conferences, online networks, many people out there who are living this lifestyle. And all you have to do is a quick Google search, and you will find those along the way. Of course, with every method of education, there will be challenges and pros and cons. Let's talk about some of those challenges with unschooling. Again, I think one of the challenges is the lack of structure can be tricky for some families. It requires a lot of trust and letting go. We're all pretty programmed at this point in time, speaking from my own perspective, but I feel as if we're all pretty programmed to believe that traditional education is the only way to become a quote unquote successful person in life. And being a parent, giving ourselves permission to unschool our children means that we will definitely come up against resistance. People will not understand what you are doing, and you will have to be very fully trusting of yourself and knowing that you are providing your child with the best education for them. And let's face it, parenting is not easy, no matter if you follow a traditional or a non traditional route. But following a non traditional route means you will definitely receive more pushback on your methods. And so you have to really trust that your child is getting the best education and you and your family are providing the best lifestyle for all of you as a complete whole picture. Another challenge is that you might find yourself worrying about whether your child is keeping up with traditional education. Will they be able to excel in the same ways that children in traditional education do? Are they keeping up with the norms of where they quote unquote should be at that time? And I think a big consideration in choosing world schooling or unschooling is also that there can be challenges to transition back into a more formal education if that becomes necessary down the road. If your child has only ever been unschooled or world schooled, they might find it challenging to sit in a classroom. But again, there are so many methodologies and so many styles of school that you can find the one that's right for you. The next method of education that I want to touch base on is international schools. And international schools are not new and they have not come forward in the digital age or become more prominent because of the digital age. They've been around for a long time. But I feel as if now that more and more people are choosing to work remotely, international schools are becoming an even more attractive option in the educational route. So, what are international schools? If you're looking for a more structured approach, international schools might be the way to go. These schools are located all around the world and they cater to expat families. They also offer globally recognized curriculums like the International Baccalaureate. Those curriculums are based more on what happens in the American, British, or French school systems. They're designed for kids who move frequently or for whose families want a top-notch education they can transfer easily between countries. If you know you're only going to be abroad for a year or two and you want to keep your child in a traditional schooling method, but also keep it in their native language, then international schools are a really great option. They're almost as if they're a middle ground between the traditional school from your native country and a traditional school in your new country. International schools are appealing because it gives your kids a traditional education while exposing them to a multicultural environment. It's kind of like having the best of both worlds. You get structure, but with a global perspective. Something that kids I know who have attended international schools love is the diversity of children that go there. They get to become friends with people their own age from all around the planet. And for kids, that's an amazing opportunity. The pro of international schools is that your kids are getting a solid education that prepares them for university, no matter where in the world you end up. International schools allow kids to build friendships with other globally minded students. And many times they often have amazing facilities and extracurricular programs that might not happen if you were world schooling or unschooling your kids. International schools do have a pretty big challenge in the form of the financial need. So, sticking with the pros and the cons of an international school really is the cost. They can be extremely expensive, especially in major cities. You also need to plan ahead to make sure that you're near a school that offers the curriculum that you want. Sometimes their acceptance rate is low because they're full. So just like trying to get your kid into the local private school that you're interested in, sometimes they're full. The option's not available. So then you have to make sure you have a very solid plan B if this is the style of education that is best for your kid. The other challenge for families that want to travel and experience the world together as a family, international schools follow a more rigid academic calendar. And so you will lose some of the flexibility that comes with homeschooling or world schooling. But again, if you're in an international school, you're already experiencing life abroad. So that might fill that need for you as a family to travel the world and experience a new culture or place together. One of my favorite things to learn about as I interview more families on the road are some of the blended approaches to education that seem to work really well. And that's the great thing about education in the digital age is that you don't have to pick just one method. A lot of families mix and match their needs. If you're interested in learning about families who have a blended approach to these education styles, my conversation with Jenny Lynn is a great resource. She talks about the way her kids have been in traditional school in the UK. They have done online education in Morocco, and now her kids go to an international school in Malaysia. They have moved their kids throughout the different styles of education over their lifetime, and the kids many times excel in the classroom when they get back into the traditional method of education in their home country. She is a great resource on using a broad perspective of education and changing each place they're in the world. And so definitely check out her episode It's episode number 91. You can click the link in the show notes or search it in the search bar above. So how do you combine these styles of education? If you decide to spend 6 months traveling with your kids, you might world school while you're traveling. And then you might go back to an international school when you settle in one place for a while. You might unschool during your travels, but use online resources like Khan Academy or OutSchool for subjects where your child needs more structure. Getting an online tutor for the specific subjects that your kids do need a little more structure is also an option, while you have the freedom and flexibility to world school on the other subjects. That provides the best of both worlds, where the kids get some of the traditional aspects of schooling, even though it's online, but then they also are able to just really dive deep into some of their fascinations and the world around them. The key is to finding what works best for you and your family and your lifestyle. It's all about being flexible and open to change. World schooling or unschooling might be the absolute best thing for you and your kids for a while, and then you might decide to settle in a location and have a more traditional 9-to-5 life. And that's the beauty of education in the digital age, is that there are tons of options and you can find something that suits your whole family best. As the world becomes more connected, education is evolving in exciting ways. The traditional school day isn't the only option anymore, especially for families like ours who want to live and learn around the world. Technology has made it possible for kids to get a quality education from anywhere, whether it's through online classes, virtual tutoring, or even learning apps that can help turn screen time into educational time. The digital age really has opened up possibilities that we as families haven't had before. And as the world continues to evolve, so will the jobs that people have in the future. The world is always evolving, and I think as we continue to evolve our education, we're providing even greater possibilities for our kids. One of the things I really love about child-led learning is the fact that they learn how to learn, and they learn how to take their passions and expand on them in a variety of ways. I think many of us get to a time in life and realize we finally are able to take those facets of our life that we love, the things that we're good at, and create a beautiful life from that. Child-led learning teaches kids at an early age how to do that for themselves. Of course, as their parents, we are always guiding them, but I love the personal responsibility that comes with the new version of allowing kids to dive into their fascinations and be active in their educational curriculum. There is no perfect method for education, and everyone's lifestyle is a personal choice. I hope that you found some inspiration in this conversation and are able to get your wheels spinning on the possibilities available for you and your family. Whether you're looking to spend 6 months abroad or just wanting to change your day-to-day life, you have options. And I think that is one of the best gifts that have come through education through the digital age. Let me know what you think about this episode. Hit me up on Instagram at designhertravel. And if you know someone who is considering educational options or educational alternatives in the world, then be sure to share this episode. That little act of kindness means a lot and helps more than you know. Until next time, my friends. Thank you so much for showing up and listening to this episode. I know that there are so many things in life that you could be doing right now. And so it means a lot to me that you're here. There are so many more episodes coming your way. So if you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to review and follow us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know someone who might like to hear it, please share. Those little acts of kindness mean a lot and help more than you know. I appreciate your time and getting the opportunity to share this moment. I'd love to hear more from you. I'd love to connect, so reach out on social. You can find me on Instagram at Seafaring Wanderer. That's SeafaringWanderer. And then you can join our Facebook group at Design Her Travel Podcast. I would love to connect, hear more from you. Let me know what you'd like to hear more of, places you'd like to hear about, and things you'd like to know how to do when designing your life. So thank you, everyone, and I'll be back soon.